A landscape both vast and untamed, we find ourselves at the crossroads of an eternal struggle. Here, amidst the ceaseless dance of digital dominance and defense, the architects of safeguard and the heralds of havoc vie for supremacy within the enigmatic realm of Active Directory. This labyrinthine network, a veritable treasure trove of pathways and secrets, sets the stage for today's episode of Atomics on a Friday. We are privileged to welcome Andrew Schwartz from Huntress and Megan Nilsen from TrustedSec, alongside our esteemed co-hosts Paul Michaud and Michael Haag. Together, we embark on a journey to unravel a compelling narrative woven from the very essence of cybersecurity strategy. Join us in this odyssey as we traverse the shadow-laden paths of Active Directory attacks with Andrew and Megan. We aim to illuminate the mysteries of cybersecurity's most critical arena, offering a beacon of hope to the vigilant defenders of our digital domains. Welcome to Atomics on a Friday, where the untold stories of cyber resilience are eloquently brought to light. In the boundless expanse of our digital world, a landscape both vast and untamed, we find ourselves at the crossroads of an...
That was welcome to Atomics on a Friday. That was the intro. It's getting better weekly.
I think the best one so far. Our weekly
Yeah.
stipends to David is working.
Yep, I know. It's quite the fortune, but you know what? We do it for the fans and the people.
We do it for the fame.
Yep. All the clicks and the hearts and the subscribes.
All 9.
Yes. So yeah, welcome. Purple March Madness is jamming. We have a big episode today. Let me take out this banner. And yeah, so if you haven't been following along to Purple Madness, this is our second annual Purple March Madness that officially, by the way, the NCAA started their March Madness. Finally, they've only been like 4 weeks late. But the idea for ours is that we bring in different backgrounds, individuals, CTI, Purple Team, research, detection engineering, and throw a topic in the mix and see what happens. And so far, we've been through, I think, 3 episodes. This is our 4th episode now, which we have our great esteemed guest joining us today.
Excited.
This is exciting.
It's a fun one.
Yeah, let's bring him in. Let's bring in there's Andrew and then Megan. Howdy.
Hey, how's it going?
Both thanks for joining. Yes. Andrew, are you? You're officially a co-host at this point. You're on this is like the 3rd time or something, right?
Moving up in the world. I love it. I love it. Happy to be here as always. So a lot of good conversations and demonstrations, and it's getting better and better with that voiceover introduction. More professional. I love it.
I'm glad you think it's more professional.
I wonder if we can get Samuel L. Jackson to do it one time. Maybe Morgan Freeman.
Make it
Mix
happen.
up a bit. Yeah. We'll see if they're free. Should be good. Awesome.
Yeah, I forgot to do other announcements, but that's okay. We'll do that later.
We'll do it at the end.
Yeah.
Fine.
Cool.
It's ready.
It's Friday. Yeah, we'll just jump in. Mike, Splunk Threat Research Team. You might know me from such projects as Atomic Red Team and Living Off the Land Drivers. Paul and I run the show together. Paul?
Yeah, I'm Paul. I run the show with Mike, senior threat hunter at Unit 42. Previously worked on Atomic Red Team, a couple other small things, one-off. You might have seen some of my stuff from Red Canary, from different blog posts, going over Atomic Red Team, emulations, etc. Yeah, excited to be here and look forward to working on and showing some of the stuff that Megan and Andrew have been up.
Yeah. So Andrew Schwartz, I'm currently the Senior Manager of Detection Engineering at Huntress Labs. Previously, I worked with Megan very closely. We're at TrustedSec, where we put out this whole DACL abuse series of posts. And so just very happy to be here with all of y'all. Megan?
Hi, I'm Megan. I'm the practice lead for the purple team at TrustedSec. And yeah, Andrew and I put this stuff out last year. Only 100 pages of blog posts to read through. So I know it was just like a light, afternoon reading and stuff like that. So really excited to talk about it.
I think it only took me like 5 or 6 weeks to like effectively go through and run everything and do some additional validation and stuff. So yeah, it was just a quick breeze through the park,
Yeah, super easy.
So good. So excited to jump into. We cherry picked a couple of them to go through. Let's kind of jump into it. So I guess let's start with like the blog itself. So what was like the genesis of this idea of going through the DACL abuses? So kind of like, let's start there, I guess, like the overview of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I can take that one and pass it to Megan. The idea was basically, it was always in my mind to do a DACL abuse, attack detection, purple team focused, of where conducting the attack, showcasing the attacks, but showcasing the artifacts and the detections and how to build them. There's a lot of great resources out there that have done DACL abuses, but never so much the counter side, the blue team side, so to speak, of how do we detect on these things? How do they operate? And where, some adversaries may go after, or some red teamers and penetration testers may also look to hide or to execute these attacks from. But really, it was just doing some of the research, and I mean, a lot of hats off to Megan. I mean, she ran with it. She simulated everything. She did the research. She did the queries. I was more of the behind the scenes and, just kind of helping out and on how to drive it. Megan?
Yeah, I mean, don't sell yourself short, Andrew. It was definitely a team effort, and he helped a lot with, organizing things and roasting my screenshots and making sure they were up to snuff and, reviewing the queries with me and stuff like that. And he came up with, I think, pretty much every single attribute that we did, and there was quite a bit of work effort and that involved as well. So it was a really fun project. I think anytime you look at things like this within any technical field or technical area, you learn a lot more just by proxy about the thing you're looking at. And so kind of delving into Active Directory more, looking at all these attributes that, we see them, we know they're there as administrators in an Active Directory environment for an organization, or even as an attacker or defender, we know all of these things exist. We know these attacks exist that in some cases modify these attributes, but we don't always think about where is this stuff? What does it do? What is the ramifications for this? And what are the implications of modifying these things? And so it was really interesting from that perspective.
Was this kind of like a newer topic for y'all on the team, or was it something y'all like worked on for a long period of time?
I think it was more of based on so at TrustedSec, right? You're able to really cross-pollinate across a variety of different services. You're able to do IR, you're able to do purple teaming and penetration testing. And one of the things, speaking from my knowledge prior there, is they really wanted to put an effort of a good defender should also be a good attacker, and a good attacker should be a good defender. So the purple team, the people on the purple team rather, were always looking to fill some of the downtime with penetration tests. And they would look to, as a part of maybe getting a foothold or, moving laterally or, escalating up in credential access, conducting some of these techniques, not necessarily all of them, but I think what the biggest thing was the mind map. If you scroll down, had so many, but also there were some that were missing that were also abused, and some of the older ones, could we still leverage those in an environment, and how could we do that? But particularly, how could we also just figure out what artifacts do we need as defenders, as purple teamers, that we want to build rules on and correlate off of all the data.
Thanks, Paul. That's awesome.
So now that we kind of get the overview of the background, like, what is the Sackle or Dackles? Like, for those who may not know, like, high level, Andrew.
Oh man, I'm always gonna butcher this. God, I have to. I always but I guess this is the good thing about is, can you explain it to yourself? Can you explain it to a friend? And can you explain to someone that you don't know? So the mysterious of the Sackle and the Dackle, right? Oh man, so how do you say this? Really, I'll have to do the best I could. Put it in there, maybe, is the Dackle, I guess, controlling access, maybe, if that's the best net TLDR, right? And the Sackle is logging set of access attempts, right? So that's where we go in and we set the auditing, and we can, it shows you how to do that of the specific attributes that we want to log. So 4662 can be very, very noisy, but we can kind of cut that down a little bit in trying to be a little bit more focused with maybe some of these specific attributes.
Megan, how do you do? Care to share any other things or correct anything that was wrong?
Oh no, he was actually correct. So we have a winner. I'm a big fan of being accurate and using other people's language when I can. So I just looked it up on Microsoft's website. So quite literally, from their own words, a discretionary access control list identifies the trustees that are allowed or denied access to a secureable object. So permission control. And then a system access control, or a SACL, allows administrators to log attempts to a secured object. So it's the permission control and the objects.
So,
easy enough.
But just a point of information is that this methodology, or this idea, right, of auditing should not be limited to just these Active Directory attacks. This research really fed some of the research, the other research we did with Screen Connect, of setting the auditing permission to generate that Windows event ID of, I believe it was 4663. So it can be applied to a plethora of other attacks of where these attributes are being modified or read or whatever the case is. And there's been a lot of other research, around this with, the Bloodhound team, Johnny Johnson, Jared Atkinson, a wealth of, just a wealth of other individuals of whose shoulders we're standing on when we did this.
No, go ahead, Mike.
No, just kind of like a deployment like question. Do you see a lot of, either anybody can answer, but do you see a lot of organizations enabling SACLs? Widespread, couple places, like kind of how often do you see these, or at least the events and whatnot?
So from my experience, I really have not. I know that, maybe some of your like MDI or Defender for Identities or your CrowdStrike IDPs, really those security products are probably trying to go more into this realm where they're seeing attributes modified. I have not, but that's just my experience. Megan, I don't know what you.
Yeah, I think it's pretty similar. I think a lot of organizations sort of stop at the advanced audit policy configuration. They go in, they enable the 4688s and the 4662s and whatever, is just there for them to see because it's right in your face there, and then other things can sometimes get dropped in the get-go. I mean, I've seen a lot lately where event ID 4688 for process command line auditing is a great event ID to have enabled, but a lot of organizations and administrators really do not realize that there is a second step to enabling that event ID to actually get the command line in the process command line auditing event. And not only is it not in that advanced audit policy configuration view, you have to kind of go digging through the policy GPO stuff to even find where that's at. And so I found on probably last several purple teams I've done where they have the process command line auditing set up, you're getting the event, but you're not getting the command line. And if that's not enabled, then you're missing a key point of the logging. And SACLs are very much the same way. There's a lot of event IDs out there that require specific logging to be enabled. If you're trying to log lapse access, for example, people who are querying lapse, you need to make sure that you have SACLs set on the OU for the computers where lapse is installed and where that's set up. So there's additional steps there that they aren't super easy to find, and if people don't know they're there and they aren't paying attention to that, and they don't even know the word DACL or SACL, then
Yeah, those are great perspectives. So let's jump into some specific attributes and just like, what was kind of the logic, I guess, Andrew, since you picked the attributes from like the full list, these are the ones that we chose for today, but what were some of like the logic of like particularly on these four, like why did they make the list out of potentially hundreds, if not thousands of attributes?
I mean, allowed to delegate to Kuros delegation. I mean, I don't think it needs any more. I mean, Kuros has been near and dear to my heart ever since I really started going deep into the subject with Charlie Clark, who's just been amazing and really helping me to really understand Kuros. And, we put out just a myriad of resources around Kuros. So that one made the list just because. Key credentialing, I think it's gained a lot more attention, really. CA certificate, I really not sure why it made the list, but MSMQ signed certificates, I think definitely is more of a forgotten one. And that was one, I believe we had to do some digging. I remember always having it bookmarked around the original research when it was first made public, and then, but I recall not seeing it on the mind map, and I was just like, why is that? Is it just not? Is it forgotten? Is it hard to execute? Is it just, maybe it didn't make the mind map because the mind map's more about relaying or whatever the case may be. So it was, so again, some of these are just the lost and forgotten ones that we wanted to include comprehensively. But that one made the list solely because it's, lost and forgotten, I think, by both defenders and attackers.
And I can fill in the blanks with the CA certificate one. So there was a post done by Decoder who had done an entire attack sequence using that specific attribute as kind of a leverage to, I think it was escalate privileges. I might be wrong on that, but it was an interesting attack use case. And I think we've seen some other stuff floating around more recently on certificate attributes in general, cert user, things like that, where it was kind of an interesting use case.
I pulled up the Decoder blog so that people could go check that out. So it's in the comments, because that was an interesting pivot. And the one thing I did like is I got sidetracked quite a bit throughout the blog because you had so many things of like, oh yeah, it was taken from this, and so I'd spend like hours in certain other ones, especially I think on the first attribute on part 1A. Like, hey, just go read this, and then I got sucked down a rabbit hole, and there was like 4 other blog posts that kept just going down. So very easy to get sidetracked because there's so much good information in this whole thing.
Just going back on that MSMQ science certificates, it was an old Harmjoy 2018. I had to remember that one and get the exact date on that post, but it was the command and control through Active Directory.
Yes. And now, correct me if I'm wrong. The blog may be missing live, but I think it's still. I think I found it in Wayback Machine. Or that one's still active.
The link could be broken, maybe, and I apologize for that because I think Will maybe moved his domain. But it comes right up. I think maybe he changed just how his blog, how you go to his blog and all that.
Gotcha. Yeah, there was one of them. I couldn't remember which Harmjoy one where I found it in like Wayback Machine, but
There's a lot of content in these blogs. I apparently didn't click on the last link, and so or part 3. No, wait, the MSMQ sign certs, and I'm like, yeah, there's a lot going on.
So let's jump into them. Unfortunately, we're going to do a live lab, but somebody's lab decided to just not exist today. That would be me. However, the good news is we still have the data from the test that I ran yesterday just to get the data in, so we have them in Splunk. But we'll kind of just outline the actual post.
You might have to share your screen.
I'm going to share my screen. We will share it. Hold on.
Don't worry, Nas. We kept your memes in there.
I have too many tabs and not enough computer screens. Present. Screen share. Window.
Andrew, you mentioned the other day your multi-line logs versus XML. Was it any cost prohibiting issues of why XML could not be used?
You can blame Johnny for that one.
Okay.
Because I use Marvel Lab, so you can. Johnny welcomes all PRs and issues, particularly GitHub issues. No, I think it's just that, right? Like,
yeah.
I use Marvel Lab. It's very easy to spin up, tear down. He's done a great job with that. I've never had a single problem with it, and it's been in the classic format, even though Splunk really recommends you use the XML. So when we did it, apologies to everyone out there. It's in the classic mode, and I know I've gotten some feedback from that in the Splunk Slack group is like, oh, it's in classic and we can't use this, and I have to now go transfer all this into XML fields. I'm like, well,
good luck.
Yeah, I mean, like we led you to water. Like, I don't know. Sorry, there's a little heavy lifting.
All right, let me move to our terminal mode.
Okay, can everybody see this? I actually can't see what's going on in StreamYard, so
yeah, you're good.
Okay.
We see a terminal, passwords everywhere. You're good.
Great. There's Who Am I, because if you don't run Who Am I,
right,
you're clearly not
lead.
So the first step in
hacker.
that's definitely not an APT at this rate. Is the new machine account, and this function module came from PowerMad, Kevin Robinson. I'm drawing a blank on his name.
I'll drop the link.
That's correct.
Yes, PowerMad. But super easy. Create a new machine account, give it a name. So that's step 1. Then step 2, which would be to then change the attribute. Specifically, again, we're focused on the allowed to delegate, and we're going to then set the machine account to something else. Why does that seem wrong? I don't remember. But either way, good news is the data already exists, so we can take a look. So literally just copy and paste. If you're like me, you have to change your index. But if you just make sure that you're running classic view for your ingestion, you should be able to just execute away. And let me just change this. So walk us through what we did here, or what we're looking at.
Megan, I'll let you take that.
Okay. Yeah, so essentially what we're doing here is using multiple different event IDs. And if you look at the blog post too, and you kind of scroll through the section slowly, you'll notice that we provided for most attributes 2 or 3 different detections. They range from a more simplistic detection that can be used to just do like a baseline. This is how you can start to get the data if your sim isn't powerful enough or doesn't have the capability to do event correlation across multiple sources at this point, or maybe you just don't know how to do that as well. Then you can start by getting the data in and seeing it, and then you can do correlation manually. This particular query is kind of like an intermediate style query where we are doing some correlation to get additional data in that we can view in one single pane of glass, which I think most defenders, when you're having 4,000 tabs open and 16 different enterprise defending tools and a sim, and you only have 1 screen or 2 screens, and you aren't cool like me and you don't have 4, then it can be, difficult to track across multiple sources. So this one is particularly using 5136, and we talk about it in the post. We go over kind of our key event IDs. That is our object, modification event. It is definitely kind of our main staple throughout this entire post. But we're also taking a look at event code 4624, which is a login event. And essentially, what this query is doing here is it's in the join space. It is combining the respective powers of event ID 5136 and the login event ID 4624 so that we can get some additional data in. Specifically in this case, the things that we're getting are the actual source network address of where the attack is coming from. Because I know as a defender, when I was looking for things and trying to track them down, that's one of the first things that I want to know is where is this coming from, so that way we can start taking action once we have a better full picture of what's going on. So in a nutshell, in the table there, you can see that we have the timestamps, again, friend of every defender there. We have the event code, which is mainly featured. That can be omitted if you don't want it in there. It's just a helpful reminder when you're looking at joins to make sure, especially that you're getting the right data in place and it's not doing funny things. The source network address of the attack, which is being collated in from the 4624 based on the login ID field. The class talks about the object type, I believe. So this is telling you that this is a computer account, essentially. And then the DN login ID type, those are all just giving you more additional information about what's being done. And then, of course, the LDAP display name comes from the 5136, and that is telling you which attribute is being modified. And then the value shows you what the value was changed to, essentially.
I mean, that was
that's
phenomenal. I mean, couldn't have said it any better. I mean, that was, yeah. I think here is, as detection engineers, is context. I've always put a value in context is king. And so most likely I'm not going to be the one doing response. So when you go to hand it off to your SOC colleagues, your DFIR, your responders, what are they going to do with this alert? How do you want them to interpret it to then drive effective response? And so it's just a matter of getting more context in to enrich the detection. So that's why we're not so focused on one event versus the other. And we're really looking to join those events to really, again, give as much information as possible.
Awesome. And I think there was, yes, another, actually there's 3, if I was not mistaken.
Yep.
So let's take a look at the next one. So this one, a little bit bigger, and looks like a new event that we're adding is the 4662.
Right.
So I guess compared from the first query to this query, what is the 4662 going to give us to provide like additional context, right? Because like that's the idea of adding all these things. So like, what does this help us with?
Well, so I mean, if you scroll down, you'll kind of see the difference in the table and things like that. You specifically, I think the key here was being able to pull in the actual properties of the object. So if you look at that field there, that's kind of the major add. The 4662 also kind of tells you the property value, if you will. So that right property there is telling you that something was written, and not just that it was read or something else like that. It just got touched in a non-meaningful way. Because obviously, if we see read, we're like, okay. If we see write, we're like, oh, okay. You know, there's a slight difference in kind of the gut instinct there. And so this gives you the actual properties involved. So if you're needing to pull GUIDs and track them across anything or do some backwards translation or something like that, you have all of that data right in your face where you can't avoid it. So again, it's just, again, as much context. I probably heard that 100 times from Andrew. Context is king, but he's absolutely right. You know, the more you can have in one single pane of glass where it's all easy to find, the less time you spend trying to hunt down other things or messing around with, you know, Splunk joins yourself. So
Yes.
Well, yeah, and you have, why is this source address conducting a write? And that's the big thing, right? That's the story you're trying to tell. You know, as Megan said, read, okay, but write, a little bit more of a red flag, right? So, I mean, you could highlight this in red with the fancy Splunk magic of the write, but that's exactly what, again, the story you're trying to tell and paint that picture to enrich the queries as much as possible. So then when time, again, you go to hand it off to our colleagues who do the response, they can see, you know, how quickly or what level of action they need to take.
Yeah, so I guess a good, like, maybe way for others to help kind of paint the picture in their head. What would be a scenario in which an attacker, where I would see this used maliciously, right? Because sometimes I think having like a story of like the before, lead up, and then after kind of helps to understand this context. So like, where would I potentially see this in like an attack path?
Well, just so happens attribution matters. So are we looking at red teamers and penetration testers? Are we looking at, you know, our smash and grab attackers? I think you're seeing, I mean, this is my personal take. You're seeing a lot of those smash and grab attackers. You know, you read DFI report as religiously as I do. You're seeing them move a little bit more into the AD space, right? You're still seeing them use the same stuff over and over and over. Your PS execs, your service creation, defender exclusions, so on and so forth. But you're getting a little more into the Kerberosing or the AD or whatever the case may be, but they're getting more into the AD. So while, yes, some of these may be a little bit more red teamer and penetration tester heavy or focused, some of them may start being abused by those level of adversaries. So it's just, you know, I think the idea though is to give a little bit more holistic view into Active Directory, as it's so big, it's so targeted. You know, the logging might be is limited by default, and we're just trying to get that insight of trying to uncover when something does happen, we're prepared to detect.
And then to expand on
bad.
And then to expand on that a little bit, so this specific attribute, specifically, just again, ripped straight from the Microsoft website, this attribute is used to configure a service so that it can obtain service tickets that can be used for constrained delegation. You know, and when I'm on a pen test or red teamers are doing things, you know, querying SBNs is a thing. We do that. It's always a test to see if we can crack those hashes. And like Andrew said, you know, adversaries are moving into that space now as well. And then we also use that to run other attacks, you know, regarding constrained and unconstrained delegation and checking for things like that. So this would be if somebody manages an attacker, you know, either pen tester or otherwise, you know, somebody who's actually maliciously trying to hurt you, manages to get around your existing detections regarding, you know, Kerberos logging, you know, maybe somehow your Kerberos logging gets shut down on your domain. It's not working. Well, if you have the 5136s enabled, then this allegedly should catch that, right? So it's providing another mechanism and kind of the circle of increasing defensive depth and ensuring that there's, plugged holes for potential ways of skirting around existing detections or existing protection mechanisms. So there's some value in it there too.
Awesome. Super helpful. And I think there was actually, it's not earlier, is that's actually 3 sometimes different queries used. And specifically, what's the 4742?
I believe that is a computer object was modified. Yeah.
Yes. So, but in essence, still performs the same thing as the 5136.
It does, but it's giving you, I think, a little bit more of changed attributes, right? So you're able to, again, further enrich the detection by pulling in those change attributes. So before we might have had, right property. Now we're getting in what was specifically changed, right? What was specifically modified. So, this is another way of just showcasing also detection layering, right? Which I'm a huge advocate for, where how do you find, the $1 million question between precise versus behavioral, as, Johnny or Jared have talked about many times. But as you want defense in depth in your controls, you also want defense in depth within your detections. So starting out very, very simple and then going deeper to get more information, to pull in, maybe more telemetry sources. So it all goes back to when you go to hand it off, you're ready to go, to your IR team.
Excellent. That's a very interesting one. And I think the allowed to delegate is definitely one of those ones that you probably see more common in the red team pen tests, but also in active attacks. It's like probably one of the first ones that you probably will have fired when you set something up similar to this. Let's jump into the next one. This is the key credential one. So this one, if I remember correctly, this actually also references another post, which were kind of like some of it was pulled from, drawing a blank on where it came from, but we use the tool Whisker to actually execute the attack to then generate the activity. Somebody want to take a stab at kind of like what this actually activity occurs with?
Right. So this came from Elad Shamir. He discovered and posted this technique, and he wrote that PE file. It has since been converted into a Python version, PyWhisker. And basically what you're able to do is modify that attribute as another form of credential access, right? So just taking over the computer and going in, because I believe Elad's initial take was, first RBCD was the only way, but then he found that you're able to write to this attribute as a method of persistence, but also credential access to get into the computer itself.
Awesome. Thanks for the context. And so when looking at this, right, slightly different because in this case, we're writing, if I remember correctly, it's binary data, like a certificate, right? Or something along those lines.
Yep. That's correct. It is a certificate.
Yeah, so this is known also as like the shadow credentials, right? So you're getting into that certificate, building out that you obtain that certificate, right? And then you can go into, from the certificate, you can take it into to get a TGT, and then ultimately you could unpack the hash to get an NT hash.
Excellent. And now the structure, I think, if I remember correctly, for most of them, all follows a very similar structure. So very easy. You find an attribute, you can almost like take this as like a framework, replace it with the right things, and then you're basically just off. You don't have to like recreate anything new each time you want to go look at these, which is the other thing that I picked up on, which was super helpful in converting a lot of these.
Yeah, for most of these queries, and I would say this carries through the entire 4-part series, particularly with the 5136s and the 4662s, sometimes the joins get a little bit funny depending on when you uplift them into a new sim. It just happens, but they were really intended to be as plug and play as possible. So you could take that same query, and if there's another attribute that you're looking at, you know, in Active Directory users and computers, you're scrolling through and you're like, oh, what's this attribute? I want to see if I have this going on in my environment. You could just literally change the name of the attribute in the LDAP display name and see if it comes up. So they were intended to be really easy for uplift in that, and that was definitely intended to be that way. It was intended to be a query template. In the same way that we were intending this to be, you know, replicable and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, it was brilliant on Megan's part to make it into a template where it's easy to follow the logic or the syntax of the query itself. And so you're not doing, you know, all these splits and just other Splunk SPL, you know, fanciness or trickery, right? It's keeping it very, very simple to replicate to all the other attacks, as well as any other new attack that someone may want to apply the similar logic to, of, you know, correlation maybe of two events.
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to what you say in part one about like when you're trying to enable the SACLs initially. In the lab, it's easy, just set it at the root and then you're good to go. But in a production, that's potentially a dangerous game. So then you also point out of potentially enabling the SACLs on the specific at the attribute level. And this kind of helped you with that of, okay, well, I'm going to go look at some more. I can focus on, you know, that specific one or the specific ones I'm looking at, and then rinse and repeat, apply these, do my testing, make sure there's not a ton of noise, or, you know, I'm not going to destroy my Splunk licensing and cause problems down the road. So
yeah, it's a double-edged sword because, you know, obviously as detection engineers, purple teamers, you know, blue teamers, whatever, when you run these attacks, you're running them in a very, very small data set. You're running them in a very small lab environment, right? And one of the things, you know, in my very, very first blogs was trying to do it one way that, you know, Olaf showed me. And then another way that Greg showed me was just to cut down the job time. But, you know, it's something just to be mindful of, that what works here, you know, might not work in a larger enterprise, but, you know, where you can set the auditing everything, but just trying to be, if you pick out one or two or three and prioritize those attributes, you know, now you have a little more insight into the environment.
Now, next one that we chose was the CA cert. So the test itself, pretty easy. So the first things you're going to do are generate a certificate, convert it, and then pull it in and use certutil to actually publish it. So pretty straightforward. The commands work flawlessly right out of the box. Literally copy paste, punch it in, used the Kali box, transferred it over, ran it, you know, pulled it down via SCP, and then executed it. Pretty straightforward. Now, I wish I had the VM going, because what I did want to show was there is a prerequisite, which was to set up the SACL on that particular attribute via ADSI. And one of the things that, you know, not having spent a ton of time in ADSI, I was like, well, how do I find this particular attribute? And then learning how to create the query, which was basically, which if you follow in the screenshot, there's a way where you can edit the query when you connect in ADSI. Basically, you can just pop in, you know, change your CNs, your DCs to your domain, and then that'll take you down, and you can literally just follow the screenshot right in there. That'd be the one thing, but unfortunately, I broke it.
I think I have it up right here. I was just kind of following along. Was it this piece right here?
Yep. So if you see in the screenshot, if you scroll up, Mike, there's kind of like two connections. One's for the first one in the screenshot is the schema, and the second one is actually the configuration. That's where you're kind of specifying where you want to drop into and then pivot. And then that's where it makes sense. Because if you're like me, you're like sitting in the root of it and you're like, wait a minute, I don't see public key anywhere. And I'm like, how do I get there? So for those of you like me who don't spend enough time in ADSI, it was I was getting ready to message Andrew and Megan and be like, I don't know what I'm doing here. But I did find it at some point. So
the funny thing about this one is I think it came out, if I recall, because this one's a little bit more on the newer side in terms of release. And I think the posts, the research was all done. And a lot of the posts were in the QA flow, the pipeline. And I was like, no, Megan, one more. Let's. And then it always turns into that one more snowball of just one more. And then like a week later, just another one more. And it's like just another one. So yeah, this one was definitely on the newer one. I was like, we got to take a look at this right when it dropped. So might as well include it. Why not? But she executed it and replicated it flawlessly. It was really hats off and hat tip to her.
yeah,
The template queries make it easy, because again, then you just have to change 1 or 2 values in there, and you're good to go. So. And kudos to Decoder's blog post too, because his instructions were super easy to follow in terms of simulating the actual attack. So I didn't have to reinvent the wheel on that front. So
if you notice, I'm changing things to a bunch of wildcards because if you're not wildcarding, you're not trying hard enough. But no, again, follows the same thing. We touched on 4662 for the correlation. We have our 5136 and our 4624 to pull in our context. And of course, we can see the right property and the specific properties that were changed. So again, easy copy paste. Literally, I did no configuration other than just removing the XML config in my inputs to make sure that I was collecting classic view. But other than that, it's literally drop it in and go. So very, very simple. So hats off for that. I think we got one more, the MSMQ. So Andrew's favorite. So
I don't know about that.
I don't know,
just,
Andrew. Not the way you were talking about it earlier.
No, I mean, like I said, I think it was just one of those forgotten ones, and ones like I've never executed in all my time penetration testing, and in talking with some of my other colleagues like Kevin Clark and Lou. I don't know if they've ever executed it. It's just one of those, like, it was awesome research. It was put out at the time, but like I don't know the traction it gained. Like I don't know any intelligence if it was ever used in the wild. Like it was just great to just revisit, really. As it had was showcasing using Active Directory as C2, which I had never seen before. So it was just great to revisit, to replicate, and really understand what was happening with the attack.
So red team, #red team challenge.
Just destroying.
I would love, for people to at me on Twitter and say like, oh yeah, I used that plenty of times, and on engagements, and this happened, that happened, or no, it's again, it always comes down to the attacker's objectives and motives. Are they trying to stay stealthy? Are they trying to raise noise? Is this a viable attack for them to execute in their flow? I don't know.
Now, one question I have: would this particular activity be common to see in an environment? Like just changing of that, is that normal? Should I expect any noise? I mean, maybe from your experiences and kind of testing and working with anybody.
To me, that would be a question I would love to ask Jim, Sean Metcalf, a lot of those people that have really done a lot more AD research than I have. Megan, to put you on the spot there.
So I think with most of these, with any kind of lab detection, right, it is difficult to really kind of make that assessment holistically. However, I think when implementing these kind of detections in client environments, there's always going to be a little bit of noise. Some of these attributes are modified as a part of administrative function, right? So if you have something going on with an attribute where there's a legitimate change to the certificate, then that value could potentially be changed. That's why we include things in these queries, like the source of the attack, right? The computer name, the user who made the modification. Because if you see, for example, if your administrator is named Joe Bob, and Joe Bob makes a change, and you see that Joe Bob made a change to this particular attribute, then you can go talk to Joe Bob, or you can say, okay, well, he's a domain admin, or he has high privileges, he works with the certificate servers, whatever it is. Then perhaps you have a higher likelihood of something being okay. But if you have, a regular user account making that modification that shouldn't be, or even a regular administrator who really shouldn't be making that modification, then it's something that you need to look at. And I will personally die on the hill of baselining queries and having them available in your environment. You need that kind of stuff regardless of whether it's pertinent to a direct attack or not, because you cannot tell what's abnormal unless you do know what is normal. So both ways, it can be a baseline query. You could also build in thresholds to these, rules too, where you do it based on account if it is super chatty. But I would argue for some of these attributes, it shouldn't be chatty. There's a couple in there that if you see it firing, it's probably, you need to be looking at that closely.
Yeah, and just going back, we started with probably some of the more common ones with the mind map from Hacker Recipes, and then started moving out from there, and just really, just doing a lot of research and saying, what else is there? What else, could the attacker be hiding that we want to look into and really uncover any signs of misuse and abuse. And that's really what led to some of these other ones. Obviously, the newer one with CA certificate, but also, again, as I said, we'll publish that post. I think I said 2018 it was, where it was so long ago. And again, just don't really have any intelligence about it being used really by red teamers, penetration testers, or even adversaries in the wild, but really wanted to make sure we include an all-encompassing of these are probably the attributes where the attacker could be hiding, and we want to just make it all-encompassing to put the information out there, and then let the reader decide where do I focus, what do I prioritize on the attribute list to audit and put queries into production.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's great stuff. Like I said, it took me a minute, got stuck down so many rabbit holes. Just really great content overall. And then again, the simplicity of copy paste is very, very straightforward. So go put these in, go test them, go validate them, and who knows? Hopefully you don't find anything, but if you do, at least you'll have the context to go actually do something about it.
I think the one thing is, and I kind of drew the line, making Megan do all the Splunk queries. I didn't have her turn all these into Sigma rules. That would have been a whole another mountain of work. I mean, she really, again, knocked it out of the park by doing the initial research and providing a little of the context of, what the attribute is, what is the background on the red POC, how do you simulate that, execute it, and then what are the artifacts that it would generate, and then building out the query from there and showcasing all of that.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's a lot of work.
So what I heard is Andrew's now going to go convert them to Sigma rules.
And XML.
Yes.
Definitely not. Maybe I'll pass that one to Nas or someone else.
This is the Nas delegated to him.
I'm really good at making issues on GitHub, so maybe I'll just make an issue for Nas to say, "Hey, please turn all of these into actual Sigma rules."
It's not still around. Maybe not. Our other co-host.
Yes, it's late. It's late over there. That's awesome. Yeah, thank you all for sharing all that. It's a ton of data.
4 parts. Go read them. Enjoy your Friday afternoon. It'll take you like 12 minutes to get through them.
Oh, just one thing.
Yeah, just
there could
2.
be. There could. I'm going to
2
say it.
things.
There could be an addendum. Is that what I'm hearing, Megan? That there's an addendum. The 5th post. I don't know about final, but
I heard part 5, leaving the door open for more parts.
Yeah, so we do have one more post coming out on this particular series. That's it's the end this time, for real, the end. I make no promises, but it does cover a few more attributes that kind of came out. Of course, there's always more, right? There's thousands of attributes, I think, hundreds at the very least, and these Andrew and I happened to find right when these were all rolling into marketing, closer to the end, and it's like, okay, we don't really have time to add these on to this post, but we do think they're important. We do think they're interesting. We absolutely think they're worth covering. We have a couple of additional baselining queries in there, some really cool findings that we had. So that's dropping sometime in April, I believe. So keep an eye out for that. And keep joining us on the Dackle journey.
That is exciting.
Just the beginning.
It's good. I think from like a blue team perspective, like I remembered Mauricio had told me we had wrote some content, looks like back in 2022 for 5136, and maybe there's some 2023 in here, and I just, as you were talking about the different, I'll call it the attributes. Yeah, the attribute LDAP display names. I was like, oh yeah, I remember this a little bit more now. We have like 5 or 6 pieces of content. It's like, yeah, I remember talking to Mauricio, and I'm like, I don't know enough about this part, all 80s stuff, and I was just like, what is going on right now? And he's just like, yeah, there's all this data, and I'm like, okay, cool. I don't even know. It's a lot. So thank you for these great blog posts.
Absolutely.
My pleasure.
Yes. And there's Naz's AOC eyes. Thank you all. Paul, is there anything else?
Yeah. I don't know. Is there more?
Yeah.
It's here.
There's
It's
always
live.
more.
We'll tweet this later, but we'll share it with you all now.
Those that are
March
live.
Madness finally started. Go vote for your favorite C2. The rounds are 3 days long each, so they will automatically close. The winners of those votes will go on to the next round. Do I have this up? Hold on, I can actually load this up on the screen.
Oh yeah. I'll tweet it out.
All right, so let's
brackets.
let's share screen here. Hold on. Present. No, not slides. Present.
Cool.
Share screen. Window.
You said there are 3-day windows?
Yes. Am I sharing this? Does it look right? Yes.
Yep.
This is it. There you go. At the end, I think it's April 5th is the last day. So no, it ends April 4th. So it's a Thursday that it ends. And then April 5th on Atomics on a Friday, we'll declare the winner. You get 1 vote per round for each match. So you get to vote for each match, and then all of the winners will then go on to the next round where they will rinse and repeat. And yeah, that is
all right. Hot take. 1 second hot takes down the list. I'll start with Andrew. Who's your first pick in the first bracket here? What are we choosing?
Oh boy, so spicy.
Caldera or Black Mamba? Who do you got?
I don't even know if I've even looked at either one of those.
Okay.
I mean, half of these I don't know. I mean, I think they're from the C2 Matrix.
Empire Covenant? That's where all of them came from. Full disclosure, there is no seeding done. There is no cherry picking. I took a list of 32 teams from the C2 Matrix that were active development the past 12 months. I dropped them into Cyber Chef and did a random or a sort. Then I just threw them in here and they were matched. There was no cherry picking. There was no seeding. There was no, well, let's make them here. You know, like the whole garbage with the NCAA. It's purely just a random order. Good luck, have fun. But now, Empire and Covenant, you definitely know those two.
How many votes do we get? What do we
You
have?
get one per match per round. So you get to vote for everything each round.
I
But
mean,
you only get one. So choose which one carefully. You don't get like 20 votes.
I will say, okay, fine. For Kevin Clark, Empire, and Hubble and Coin for them, I will say that. The rest, I'm not. I plead the fifth on any other.
Nighthawk Sliver.
Nope, no comment.
Mythic Brute Ratel.
No, definitely no comment.
You don't
Merlin?
have any comment on Beaver Rat?
Ooh, Nimplan?
Fudge C2? You're telling me you've never dabbled with a little Fudge C2?
Ooh, I hope this ends with Beaver Rat and Nighthawk. I'm sorry.
That's what I really am hoping for at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed, but we'll see what happens. Again.
Cobalt Strike.
Oh yeah, who's all right, so we got Havoc versus Core Impact.
Oh, Trevor's in here. I didn't realize that was still around. That's great.
According to the C2 matrices, I don't know who's running that these days, but
Core Impact and Havoc. That's a tough. I don't know. I don't know.
Strike versus Chaos. I don't think I've ever seen Chaos.
All right.
But
I submitted my votes. It says it'll be displayed in about 5 minutes. There you go.
yeah, so you don't get to see the stats of the vote count until after you vote. So
click on start voting at the top. That's what I just figured out. And then you can go down the list of voting. Ooh, this is...
Yeah.
So when it gets to the final, is there going to be a bake-off of versus all the EDRs? And
We'll
Yeah,
invite
and-
Justin. Justin will come in and do live.
definitely.
we'll settle it
Definitely.
once and for all.
He doesn't
Yep.
know that yet.
Oh, he does now. Surprise!
Yes. Welcome back.
Surprise!
Welcome back, Justin. Is he here?
Was that it? I think that was it.
There
you it was coming.
There was something else.
Dates and times are hard. Oh, next week, final March Madness episode.
Yes. Anton.
Anton coming back.
Kubernetes.
Honestly, he's basically like the fifth co-host at this point with the amount of times he's been on.
Yeah.
So Anton's coming back. We're doing Docker stuff. Docker containers.
Kubernetes.
Yeah, it's gonna be
Yep.
good.
I'm
Very
excited about that.
I know nothing about this.
Yeah.
So,
It'll be good. Like 80 attributes. No idea what's going on.
yeah, pretty much. I know memes. I don't know anything else. So
Yeah. Our intern knows how to generate great content. And that's all we got.
yeah,
That's why people are here.
and somehow had a sick connection to get David Attenborough to do our intros for us.
Yeah.
I think he has a new episode, a new show on Netflix. I got to go watch.
Yes.
Is
I
it
did.
about 80 attributes?
I wish I could listen to that all day.
I think
right, y'all.
we do have 2 episodes coming up in April, and I think I'm working on a third. But first episode is Impede. We'll get an Impede live demo, which would be cool. And then Ben will be joining us. And then the next one is the recruiter one.
Career day.
Career day. Atomics on a Friday, career day, sometime in April. There's a date. I forgot it, but it'll be coming up too. I'll get those published after March Madness. Yeah.
Finish March 1st.
Yeah.
Get through this month first.
Yeah. I know. I might stagger it out to like May at this point.
Good idea.
That's a lot.
Excellent.
But yeah. Thank you, Megan.
Yes.
Thank you, Andrew.
Andrew
Appreciate you
and Megan,
both
for
coming.
joining us.
Thank you.
Look forward to you next Friday to wrap out March Madness. Make sure you go vote for your favorite C2 every 3 days.
Yes.
Check it. We'll make sure we tweet out when the next round starts. So don't miss out.
Oh, this is gonna be good.
Can't wait.
Thank y'all. Have a great
Thanks, y'all.
weekend. See you next week.
Have a good one.